Hello everyone, I'm Rosphere, and today we're going to talk about Shadowbringers. I had not planned on making this video today, but there's maintenance today, April 3rd through the April 4th. I'm guessing they're doing that hardware upgrade they were talking about. I heard a little bit about it. I didn't really watch the live letter, but I did watch some small reactions to it because I'm not up to date on the story, and there is spoilers in the live letters, so I just kind of avoid those. And most of the information that they're talking about is stuff that I don't know anything about, so I just kind of avoid those. I forgot to say this in the initial recording. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you don't want things spoiled, go ahead and click off the video now before we get started. If you are here for the discussion, make sure to drop a like and subscribe so that you can continue watching the rest of these videos as I go through the MSQ, and maybe stop by a live stream. And yeah, with all that being said, let's get right into it. Last I spoke about Shadowbringers, I talked about, or I left off where Teslene had just been transformed into one of the Sin Eaters, and honestly, that was probably the most emotional moment in the entire story so far. Like, from A Realm Reborn all the way through to that point, that was by far the most emotional, hard-hitting moment for me. It was really difficult to see, and it, honestly, like, kind of upsetting. Like, I've seen people, like, post their reactions to Teslene's transformation and stuff like that, and just seeing the thumbnails of it, I'm like, I get like full on PTSD, and I can't click on them. I can't watch those videos because I don't want to see it ever again. It was so sad. It was so horrible. I hated it. Uh, and it's not like hate in a bad way. It's hate in a, I've seen it once. I don't need to see that again. I'm not really interested in seeing other people's reaction to it because I don't want to watch that specific part of the story ever again. Because it was so emotional and it was so difficult for me to get through it. I actually turned my stream off like 20 minutes after that, after seeing that within the story. And I had made it through like 8 hours of the story. First, I started off with Alphino, and then I went over to Alice and went through all that stuff. And that was so rough. It was such a rough introduction to Shadowbringers. It took me quite a while to actually go back and start doing the MSQ again. And when I did, the story got even better. And it was super interesting to see everything going on in Il Mheg, because essentially after you see that thing with Teslene, uh, you find yourself going through. You go back to the Exarch and you're talking to them, and you figure out what you're doing next. And essentially, you get sent off to the first dungeon of Final Fantasy's Shadowbringers. And that first dungeon was absolutely amazing. It was really, really well put together. It's one of my favorite dungeons to this point. And it was really sad because obviously, like, the second boss of that dungeon is Teslene. And it's like, oh, okay, so there's no way we can save her. She's just completely gone. And it was so sad to do that dungeon. But the mechanics and everything was really fun. And I get, honestly, like, what was even more sad about that dungeon is the fact that I didn't notice that Teslene was the second boss until after the fact, when somebody in my stream told me, because I was having so much fun going through the dungeon for the first time. And when I'm going through a dungeon, I generally don't like pay super attention to what's going on within the dungeon. I'm just there to kill shit. I'm there to beat up the boss. I'm there to have fun, because most of the time within Final Fantasy, going through the story, you don't get time to play the game. So when I'm actually getting a chance to play the game, I'm not sitting back and like looking at everything, taking it all in. I'm focused on, like, okay, I finally get a chance to play the game. So I did miss it, but somebody pointed it out immediately after, and I was like, oh, that's depressing. That's really depressing. Um, but yeah, so enough about Teslene. Yeah, that was by far the saddest point in the entire story to me. And before that, the saddest point was probably the death of Haruchifan in heavensward. And it was that was really difficult to watch. Uh, that was so emotional too. But that one wasn't like painful. It was emotional. I mean, I was really sad. Uh, it was rough to watch, but I could watch it again, and it's like a good memory. The seeing what happened to Teslene is not a good memory. Although it was really, really good for the story, I'm super invested in it, partly because of that. But man, that was rough. That was almost too much. Anyways, so moving on from Teslene, you go through the first dungeon, and you kill the first Light Warden, and you bring the Night Sky back to the Crystarium and that zone, which I'm forgetting the name of at this point. But it was really cool to see the Night Sky come out, and the mixture of like the kind of iridescent, like glowing purple, light infused plants and stuff like that within that zone against the night sky. Like, that zone is just beautiful. It was really well put together, and I love looking at that zone. It's really cool, specifically at night. It's not so much so during the day, because the colors don't mesh really well. It's like everything's kind of blown out, and I understand that that's what they're going for. They're going for the feel of like there being too much light. It's kind of blinding, and light is it's too much. And then when you bring night in, it's just like, it just feels good. It feels really, really good. And they did that in such a great way, the art team, to mesh it with the story, because it just felt so nice to actually see the night sky. And they made that they did that on purpose to mesh with the story. The art team worked so well with the story team, and making it feel like there's too much light, and you don't really notice until the light's gone and there's nighttime again, and it's like, yes, this is good. This is really, really good. This feels good. You felt like you did a good thing, and you could physically see it reflected in the world. And that was a really, really cool realization for me. Actually, like, that was just awesome. But yeah, after you do that, you absorb the light essentially from the the Light Warden, and then shoot it off into the sky, and it supposedly dissipates. And then you go to Il Mheg, where you find Urianger and his cursive speak. And yeah, Urianger is really cool. It's kind of cool to actually see Urianger get a major part in the plot, because in A Realm Reborn, I don't know how it was in the original. I never paid attention to the original story before they reworked it, but in the original, or sorry, in the current story as it is now, Urianger has like kind of like a side thing going on within A Realm Reborn, and you don't really pay much attention to him in Heavensward. He's there, but it's like this character that you don't really care about. It's just like, oh, it's Urianger again, and he's kind of smart, and he speaks funny. That's really all you know about him. You don't really get to know his character. You don't get to know his personality or anything until in, not even really in Stormblood. He's kind of there, but he's not, like, I don't even remember anything from Stormblood with Urianger specifically. So it's really cool to see him as a main focus within one of the zones, and going through after Il Mheg even, like, he's still like a main focus within Shadowbringers, because he's a cool character. It is really difficult to read what he's saying sometimes, because he uses words that I would never use, and that I just never see used on a daily basis anywhere other than in Final Fantasy when he uses them, because nobody else uses those words either. And it gives his character like a really fun, awesome, like, it just gives his character a really good feel. Now, you go to Il Mheg, and obviously the fairies are messing with you, and I did skip a big part, by the way. I forgot the part where you rescue baby Minfilia, or her, like, child version. She looks to me like she's probably like 15, 16, something like that, age-wise. Late teens, mid to late teens. She's a kid. But it's not Minfilia. It's somebody who just kind of looks like Minfilia, and you kind of find out what's going on with her. That's like a whole in-depth story with how Thancred kind of like, he's protecting her, but he also resents her because it could be Minfilia, but Minfilia is not willing to like take over this girl's body because she wants to give her a chance at life, and it's this whole thing that's going on. And so Thancred is kind of like regrettably like protecting her in this weird like sense that I get the feeling that Thancred is kind of hoping that Minfilia will actually take over the younger Minfilia and come back. But Minfilia won't do that. Like, I can't see a situation where Minfilia would do that. She's too nice. She's too much of a good person, kind-hearted, all that stuff. I can't imagine her taking that away, uh, this girl's chance at life away, unless she absolutely has no other choice. Um, which is kind of crazy because you know that Minfilia is there, but she can't be there. It's this weird thing. It's like she's watching, but she never interferes. And yeah, so and then this girl has her own like development story arc that's going on, and it's really cool. But yeah, back to Il Mheg. So you're in Il Mheg. You go into Il Mheg. The fairies kind of mess with you because they're mischievous and they want to keep you as their playthings and pets and all this other stuff. And you find a way to break the spell that they have you under. And you go to, talk to Urianger. He does his cursive speak thing. And between Urianger and Alphino, you kind of like they kind of go back and forth a little bit and talk about the origins of the Fae, specifically the fairies, whose origins are just incredibly, incredibly sad. And I've made a video talking about this because I compared the way that fairies experience time and the way that dragons experience time, because they both live forever, but they experience time in totally different ways, which is very interesting. Um, but yeah, the fairies themselves are from they're basically reincarnated or the souls of children who died too soon, and they have come back as fairies, and that's kind of why they're childlike through the whole time, and they focus on the here and now and only here and now and not the past, not the future, and all that stuff. Now, there's a bunch of there's actually it's kind of sad. There was like there's a side story within Il Mheg where you pick up the story from or pick up this quest from one of the fairies, and they just want to be popular, right? They want people to like them. They want the other fairies to admire them. So like you have a couple options of like, oh, you could do this because they ask you for advice on how to be admired. So I was like, well, you could be the cleverest fairy, and that would probably make you popular. And the way that this fairy took it is she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go read books, but I can't read, so you're gonna have to read them to me. So you go to Urianger's place, you read her a couple books. She learns a little bit about the history of mortals, and she goes and tells the other fairies, and the other fairies are like, well, we don't care about the past, so why are you telling us this? And she gets really, kind of depressed about it, and it's really sad because it's like, man, I wish she could be popular, but also it's kind of stupid to want to be popular, but at the same time, it's like I feel bad for this fairy because they didn't get the happy ending that they wanted, but it's just another example of the fairies living in the here and now. They don't care about the past. They don't care basically because this fairy was slightly smarter, even though she didn't go about it the way that maybe they should have, to get more clever and stuff like that. When I said clever, I meant like the best at playing tricks, not really the most knowledgeable. So, yeah, it didn't go the way I had assumed it would go, and it was kind of sad. But anyways, so you find out that they're children that had died too soon, and then the Fauth, I think they're called, the water fae. They're people that have died through water, essentially, like they drowned, and they came back, and they're super like mischievous in an evil way, not really just like a fun way. I guess the fairies are kind of mischievous in an evil way too, because they turn people into bushes so that they can keep them, and then they call them their children, which is just weird. But yeah, so you go through the whole like zone of Il Mheg, and you're meeting all these different fairies or all these different fae. There's the ones that are kind of like dogs. They act like dogs. Got real serious golden retriever energy. I'm forgetting the name of them at this point, but that's really all you need to know about them is they kind of act like dogs, and they live for a very, very long time, if not forever as well. But I didn't really like learn where they came from. And then there's the birds. I'm forgetting the name of the birds. But essentially they're like the chocobo of this land, but they're more like raven chocobo. And they're fae because they've spent so much time around humans that they've learned how to speak. And their origin is a little bit weird, because not all of them turn into this bird that can actually speak. Not all of them gain the ability to talk. And yeah, it was really kind of sad. That was another really sad moment. It wasn't super sad, but one of the birds named Seto is the bird of the warrior, the original warrior of darkness, Ardbert. And Ardbert, he kind of shows up when this bird Seto is talking about this medallion that he was given by Ardbert, and it was like his most prized possession. He wished that he could have told Ardbert how much it meant to him, but at the time when Ardbert was still around, this bird Seto had not learned how to speak, so he could never tell him how much it meant to him. But it was really cool because Ardbert was a ghost, and he was able to hear how much it meant to Seto, and it was like a really sad, super emotional moment, but it was a good memory, not kind of not like Teslene, which was a painful memory. uh, Ardbert is Ardbert and Seto, and seeing them kind of like Seto didn't know that Ardbert was watching, and he never finds out. But that was a good memory because it was wholesome. It felt good, even though it was sad to see that as like a yeah, like that was just a good memory. And thinking back on it, it just makes me happy to kind of talk about because Ardbert got to hear it. Um, yeah. Anyways, so you go through this whole zone. You're collecting the pieces to unlock the castle, which is, kind of cool. You get all these pieces like the staff and all this other stuff, put them together. You unlock the castle, which is where the light warden for Il Mheg is. You go in and just in the nick of time as the Yulmorian army is showing up, you finish off the light warden, turn everything dark. And again, this zone looks so good when it's dark and after the light warden is dead. I really love how they're showing in the world, like with the art team. I love how they're showing how what you're doing reflects into the actual world because it's like you're making positive changes and it feels great. And again, when you kill this light warden, you absorb the energy from it and you shoot it up into the sky, and boom, night sky comes out. Looks amazing. And then you have this really cool cutscene with I think his name is Rajit, the general for the Yulmorian army, um, who's just this badass dude, right? Like he's just nasty dude. I can't wait to actually like fight him. I'm assuming at some point it will either be like a story fight or a trial where you get to fight this guy and put him down. And I'm really looking forward to actually fighting him. I haven't gotten there yet, but I do hope that it happens, and I hope it happens soon because I think it's going to be fun. And yeah, so anyways, you do that, and after you defeat the Light Warden, there's also this extra thing because the Light Warden of this zone was actually the king of the fairies, which is kind of like a little twist there. And it's like kind of like the Lich King in a way. It's like there must always be, a Lich King kind of vibe where there must always be a Fey King for this zone. So you kill it, and I forget what the items were, but there were some items that were there, and it's like, well, somebody has to pick them up. And if you were to pick them up, if the Warrior of Light were to pick those up, then you would have become a Fey, which I think would be kind of interesting. I know that if it did happen, it would kind of ruin the entire story for the rest of the expansion because it would change everything. Uh, it would be really interesting to see, but there was another Fae there, one of the fairies, the one that the Exarch had assigned to you, which she was kind of different than the other fairies. She seemed like a little bit more intelligent. Maybe it was her time interacting with the Exarch that changed that. But she becomes the king and then, goes out and with you, flying on the back of Seto, you fly down and the Yulmoran army retreats. The fairies kind of like start turning them into what's it called? Different, turning them into bushes, and the Fauth show up and like pull the people down into puddles and drown them, and it's really kind of cool. It's terrifying, but it's really cool. And obviously, the Yulmoran general bitches out and retreats because not even he can take out everybody at once, I guess. But yeah. So then, after you're done with Il Mheg, you move on to the forest where Ishtola is, and I'm forgetting the name of the forest. It's like Raktika or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the name of the forest is. It doesn't really matter all that much. I would log in and check or Google it, but I'm just letting the stream of consciousness go because this is kind of fun to talk about, especially since I can't get on and I can't play the story and stream it and have fun. Speaking of which, if you want, you can go watch the whole VOD of my MSQ right here on the YouTube channel. I go live here on YouTube, not on Twitch. So if you want to check that out, you can. But getting back to it, you go to the forest, and it's really kind of interesting because you go to the forest, and the people of that forest descend upon you because they think that you're sin eaters, and obviously you're not sin eaters. They realize this when they see you with their eyes, but you find out fairly quickly that Y'shtola was the one who sent them after you, and so she sends them after you because she can't see. She's been blinded forever. She just uses the ether around her to see, and like she senses things. So she sensed something that reminded her of a sin eater. And you kind of find out pretty quickly that she doesn't recognize the Warrior of Light as the Warrior of Light. Something in you has changed. You're not the same anymore. And you find out later on that when she's talking to Urianger and you kind of eavesdrop through the door, that she is worried about the light that you've absorbed from these light wardens, because you've been absorbing it and shooting off into the sky. And she's like, there's no way that she's been dispersed, or the Warrior of Light has been dispersing this light, because her ether has changed so much and it's mimicking that of the light wardens. Now, I don't know for sure, and this is when it starts to get kind of interesting too, because it's not just the sad moments and the craziness that's been going on with the Yulmoran army chasing you and all this other stuff going on, and there's all kinds of side stories, like I said, with the Minfilia and Thancred, and then yeah, there's all that stuff going on. But you're kind of at this point starting to figure out what's going on. At least I think I'm starting to figure out what's going on within the zone, or within Shadowbringers, and it's this idea of light and dark, and that one obviously cannot exist without the other. And even though the Warrior of Light is really strong and can absorb multiples of these light wardens' energy without, how do I put this, succumbing to their powers, without actually like physically changing your actions and things like that, I'm assuming there is a point where it will overcome the Warrior of Light and you would transition into being one of these light wardens, and you'd probably be like a super, like a, I don't know, like a Super Saiyan light warden, right? Like you'd be like over the top crazy light warden. And I'm assuming that's kind of where it's going, because if you have too much light, then there is no dark. If there's too much dark, then there is no light. You have to have both, right? Which is kind of where I'm thinking the shadow, like at the end of the trailer from Shadowbringers, like you see the Warrior of Light, and he's got like purple coming out of him, and it's like shadowy stuff, and it's I'm assuming that it kind of goes that direction where you have to start taking on some dark energy as well to basically prevent yourself from being overcome by the light. I have no idea how this is going to happen. They're not really explaining it yet. I do have a feeling that's the reason why Emet-Selch is helping at this point, and Emet-Selch is the Ascian. He's like the same rank as La Habrea as far as like an Ascian goes, and he's been helping you to this point, and I'm assuming that's why he's helping, because he knows what's happening, and if he helps us, he can push us towards absorbing all these light wardens faster and then being taken over by their power. At least that's what I'm assuming, because he's, you know, obviously he's not good. He's not helping us for reasons that we want him to help us for, but he is helping. He even, the last thing I did within this Shadowbringers so far, the last thing I did was the quest where Emmett brings Y'shtola back, because you go through this temple so that you can get, what were we trying to get from in there? We were trying to get something. I don't remember like exactly what we were trying to get because I was too focused on what actually happened. And it was another one of those moments where I wanted to stop playing because of what happened in the story after that. Because I was just like, okay, I need to take a break. Because basically everybody had been, all of these children, not the children of darkness, those are the evil ones. I can't remember. Like you're with this tribe of people that worship darkness essentially, which is another reason why I feel like there's some foreshadowing going on there with the warrior of light needing to start taking on some darkness to help cleanse out all of this light that you've been absorbing because it's becoming too much, or it will become too much at some point, and you won't be able to contain it. I have a feeling that's a little bit of foreshadowing going on there, but essentially, Stola was with these people, uh, and they are the ones that worship darkness, and she's been helping them. And you find out as you're raiding the temple because the Yulmoran army is after you, as they have been. The Yulmoran army is after you, and right as you get to the end of the temple, you get what you need, and then Rajit shows up, and he does Rajit things, right? He starts messing everything up. His little helper shows up and steps on a booby trap and blows up the floor, and yeah, he pulls out this antidote vial and says, "Hey," because he doesn't want to die. He's like, "Hey, if you don't kill me right now and push me down this hole, I have the antidote, and we poisoned all of your friends. So don't push me down the hole." And of course, Rajit's like, "We're not negotiating with these guys," and he just kicks his subordinate down the hole, all 300 style, right? And so the antidote's falling down, and Ishtola immediately runs and jumps down the hole, grabs the antidote, and throws it back to the Warrior of Light. And of course, I thought Ishtola was dead, and I was at the time I was like, "There's no way they would do that. They're not going to kill Ishtola. They wouldn't do that." And I just kept saying that in my head over and over again. It's like, they wouldn't do that. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Because it felt like they were ending another character. And then not long after that, Thancred shows up with Urianger, and Thancred and Urianger together pull Rajit, the general for the Yulman army. They pull him down, and he falls down the hole. And then you get the antidote, you take it out, you help everybody, you save everybody, all that stuff. And that's when Emet-Selch shows up and is like, "Well, I suppose I could help and get Ishtola back," because Ishtola used the power flow or whatever to transfer herself into like the river of ether. And the only reason you were able to get her back before was because of the elementals within Eorzea, which you're not going to be able to do in the first, I believe is what's called, in the first, where Shadowbringers is. You're not going to be able to do that there because you don't have the same powers there, right? So Emet-Selch shows up and he's like, "Well, I suppose I could help. I could probably pull her out, no problem." So you go out and you find the proper space for him to be able to pull her out, and he summons her back, puts clothes on her, unlike the elementals just leaving her naked. So he puts clothes on her, and everybody's super happy. She's back, she's safe, and Emet-Selch helped. And again, like I said, I'm pretty sure that he's helping the Warrior of Light so that you can eventually be overcome by the light and then be the disaster of this world, which would then cause the 8th umbral calamity or whatever it is, and move you into the next era so that they can merge everything back with the source. I'm assuming that's what it is. I'm still not fully sure what all of this means anyways, because there's like all these different worlds. Every calamity is like one of the worlds that has merged back with the source, and the Ascians were the ones that are doing it. I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know what the purpose of it is. I don't know who their god is still that they're trying to bring back into existence, why they're trying to do it. There's so many different questions that it's very possible that I missed something in the story. There's just so much going on. And yeah, that's essentially where I left off, was like right after Ishtola came back. because I was gonna stop and leave it all sad. And somebody in my stream told me, "Hey, you should probably finish this next quest." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do one more." So I did one more quest, and that was bringing Ashtola back. So thank you to the person who told me to do that. That was good. That was a good way to end the stream the other day. So yeah. Before this video gets way too long, I'm gonna end it here. And yeah, do all the things, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.